to mark the end of the centenary of World War I, there's a week of free activities and events happening in places across Northern Ireland starting today on the theme of shared heritage. It's been organised by the Public Engagement Centre at Queen's in Belfast as part of their Living Legacies initiative.
Well, this is a series of festivals which are running right across the UK. And they're tied into really the ending of the centenary of the First World War and a kind of reflection and looking back, but also in a sense of kind of celebration really of the amount of work that's been going on, especially at the community level, people and groups interested in researching the First World War and lots of different aspects of that. So the festival really is a way of bringing together those community groups with other organisations as well, and looking back and kind of learning from that experience. The lessons, I suppose, going forward.
Right, well today we had a very stimulating conversation with various stakeholders from around the UK and also from around Ireland as well, reflecting on the centenary of World War I and how universities have been working with different organisations, heritage stakeholders if you like, at both local and also national levels, and trying to get to grips with some of the policy challenges.
We're looking at what academics call the co-production of knowledge. So we're interested in the ways that academics in British universities have worked with community history groups throughout the period of the centenary. And the second thing we're doing more broadly is we're trying to get a sense of the ways that the centenary has changed the way that British people think about the First World War and whether it has changed that. It was really important for us to include Northern Ireland in this project because the history of the Great War, the First World War in Northern Ireland is so different from the rest of Britain, and also because I think the potential for the centenary of the Great War and the decade of centenaries in Ireland to cause problems and divisions rather than to kind of build communities was greater here than it was elsewhere.
The engagement centres, these 5 World War I engagement centres, were funded through the Arts and Humanities Research Council, the HRC. So it's the arts and the humanities working together in partnership. So it's really important that when we develop these conversations with wider communities and different stakeholders, that we present the opportunities that this partnership enables us to bring something more through using the creative arts, visual arts, performing arts, as well as humanities traditions around archaeology or geography or history obviously as well, and putting those things together into dialogue with each other and showing how that really enriches our understanding of complicated pasts.
We're delighted this morning to launch the World War I Community Platform and Archive. The idea for this World War I Community Platform came from the many project groups and volunteers asking us where they could not only archive their research, but also share it all with a wider audience. The platform enables users to freely access digital materials and continue to explore the social and cultural impacts of the First World War through the efforts of community researchers.
So as part of the Council for British Archaeology's Homefront Legacy project, we looked at researching places in people's local communities. We asked and encouraged volunteers to go out and find out about the places near them, research them and upload them to our online app, so we could create an online map that showed all of the different types and variety of sites that are available around the home front. So we had everything from your typical pillbox and drill halls, right the way through to places where protest events were held and First World War hospitals. So a real diverse mix of places and buildings and spaces that really bring the people of the UK to life when you're thinking about the stories of the First World War.
I think as a historian myself, I think it's really important to come to areas like West Belfast to actually see the areas where the people that we read about in books lived. It gives us texture, it gives us a sense of the culture and the place that they originated from.
If you take West Belfast as an example, identity is everywhere and it's historically informed. And thinking about the walking tour that we do through Living Legacies, starting in the Falls and going over to the Shankill, looking at histories of UVF members who joined the British military during the First World War.
Richard's work is very good in that it actually goes beyond the stereotypes that communities have told themselves and we've told ourselves about those communities, and shows us that history is not simple, clean. It On the contrary, it's complex, sophisticated and messy.
Well, the commemoration of World War I in Northern Ireland is often seen as exclusively part of one community's history. I think the play that I've been working on, or that started this kind of research, Medal in the Drawer, a play that tells a story of men from both sides of the community who fought side by side. And I think it's really important that we understand, especially in Northern Ireland today, that we share much more than what separates us, that we have ancestors and members of our family whose stories may have been untold or suppressed in some way.
What we learned is that by embodying the people who they're reading about in books or seeing on a page, they get much more out of the process, and they find that they can feel more, really kind of experience the emotions and get a better sense of what it might have been like to live in that period, to have fought in the war, or to find yourself sitting at home waiting for a loved one to return. So it's a much more embodied experience by trying to act these things out.
We were trying to reach young audiences, and we were trying to talk to kids from the age of P7 right the way through. So it was really important for us to do things a little bit differently and to engage with them in a way that was relevant.
I think the arts are particularly important, and some of the performative arts aspects like theatre, but also performative commemorations like parades and public artwork on beaches that have happened throughout this project, I think have been incredibly moving, very engaging, exactly what we were just talking about with allowing people to bring their own stories into that space and allowing a variety of different stories to exist within one space. I think that's where their value is incredible, and that capacity should be invested in and brought forward into the future.
The First World War programme is over in Britain, but the decade of centenaries here is probably going to be far more difficult than the First World War was, because we have the foundation of the state here, the two states in Ireland, and we have the Civil War, which would have a big effect on Northern nationalism. So it's ongoing for us. It's not over. It's becoming more difficult from here on.
But we have talked about how there is a danger of thinking about shared heritage as a drive towards consensus, and that's coming across very strongly today in terms of that's not necessarily what we should be working for. We should be working to be able to accommodate diverse and conflicting narratives within one space. So I would agree that perhaps we should be talking about a space that we can share in which many different types of conversations can happen at one time and together.
And I think the policy challenge we can help with is that of inclusion, of making sure that in any event or any activity that's happening, or in the way that we develop our society and our public services, different voices are heard and that all those voices are valued. I would say that that's heritage is real role, because it's key to identity, it's key to who we are. And so often people think that they know about someone else's heritage. If we have a shared experience, even if it is several hundred years back in history, and we all have these deep roots, then being able to talk about it means we can be more inclusive.
So I think the message to policymakers in these sort of contexts is about involving different voices in these conversations. It's not about isolating different bubbles, different sectors, different parts of sectors. It's about providing those spaces and those platforms to bring that together, and that might be something that requires larger discussions, but it's about understanding that there is that need for those conversations and the need to bring those voices into the room rather than to isolate it in the academy, in universities or in large heritage institutions. It's also about investing in a long-term legacy, so ensuring that this is not something which is isolated within projects, but something which has long-term support from the whole sector and from government.
I'm left with a sense of a frustration with the lack of political leadership here in Northern Ireland in particular, but in a wider sense as well, but a feeling that there is the potential within the sector itself, within the heritage sector broadly, to fulfil that gap, because there is a wealth of experience that has been developed to date, both through these centenary programmes but also previous to those centenary programmes, and that we can draw from those to work out better how to work together more effectively, more collaboratively, to share resources more effectively, and to work outside of the heritage sector to engage effectively with the communities that we would like to work with, so that this work becomes much more effectively resourced and much more sustainable in the future.
There's certainly a huge appetite to continue this work, which is, I think, a very important message. So the engagement centres have been funded for 6 years. Funding finishes 2019. And it's good to hear and recognise that what we've been doing has been well received, has a role to play, and can be and should be sustained going forward. So it's really important that the university sector responds to this, our institutions, and recognise that there is a lot of work still to be done, but we're in a much better place now, having had 6 years of experience of working like this, a much better place to develop new initiatives, new partnerships, and create centres where we can say to the wider public and to the community stakeholders and the heritage stakeholders, look, this is who we are, here's a door, and it's an open door.